Well, Gambia's new president, Adama Barrow, returned this week to Gambia from neighboring Senegal, where he'd been staying since unrest swept that country after longtime President Yahya Jammeh refused to concede the election in December. Now, Jammeh left the country January 22nd after being convinced to step down by regional leaders who were backed by the United Nations. Barrow was declared the winner of the December 1st presidential election, but after conceding defeat, Jammeh refused to hand over power, citing alleged mistakes by the Independent Electoral Commission. A very reluctant leader. Now, joining us now to talk about what that means for the West African country of Gambia, I'm joined in our Washington studio by Vincent Makori, host of our VOA's Africa 54 program, and from our New York studio by VOA United Nations correspondent Margaret Besheer in New York. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. Vincent, it's been way too long.
Oh, sure.
Now, let's talk about this transfer of power. As far as transfers go, this is fairly significant. 22 years in power.
It is significant. This 22 years in power by a guy that has been described as perhaps one of the most repressive leaders. He was also eccentric. This is a guy who claimed that he can cure diseases, including HIV/AIDS through some kind of prayer. But over the 22 years, he held the country by, an iron claws. He tortured people. His opponents, any activist was arrested, tortured. Some died. Many went to exile. Up to 20 journalists actually have been forced to leave the country since then because of repression. So he was an autocrat. He was a guy who tolerated no criticism from anybody.
So this is, what does this mean for Gambians? I mean, having this fresh start now.
One woman during the campaign said, "We're tired." For the Gambians, this is relief. 22 years of an autocratic rule, for them, it is almost unbelievable that they are able to breathe
for many
again.
Gambians, this is the only president they've ever known.
This is all they've known, and it was so repressive that many of them did not see hope of ever feeling a sense of freedom.
Right. Margaret, let me get you into this conversation. What role did the United Nations play in convincing the former president to step down? What kind of incentives or pressures were brought to bear?
So the UN was active on two fronts. They had the West Africa representative, Mohamed Ibn Shambas. He was doing some shuttle diplomacy back and forth, trying to deal with Jammeh, trying to encourage him to step down, go peacefully. He was working with ECOWAS, the regional bloc, which was very heavily involved in this, and the African Union. And on the second front, the UN Security Council put out a resolution, a unanimous resolution for once they're united, and they basically said, Mr. Jammeh, you're illegitimate. We recognize Adama Barrow, and they didn't go so far as to authorize the Senegalese troops from ECOWAS, but they basically said we're opening the door to this. So there was this threat of something bad that could come. So there was united messages and pressure, and we see it ended up in a conflict prevention situation.
Right, and this is where the UN really shines, Margaret. Right now, though, is there any concern among UN members there about political instability, I guess, as we move forward with the new Barrow administration?
Well, look, it was so dangerous, Mr. Barrow couldn't come back until this week. So, of course, there's concern. And the UN is beefing up its country team in the country. They're sending some extra people there. Mr. Shambas will continue to go back and forth. The Secretary General is leaving today to go to Addis Ababa for the African Union Summit. So that will be an opportunity for him to also speak to regional leaders about the situation. So definitely the UN is keeping an eye on things. Don't forget, there's also ethnic groups in Gambia, so you want to make sure there's no, fracturing along ethnic lines or any sort of reprisals. So definitely they're going to be watching for the near future.
And Vincent, I assume that Adama Barrow is no stranger to politics. What can you tell us about him?
This guy has been, supporting the opposition in that country, which was a very courageous move because it was not easy to really fight against this man. He's a real estate guy. Much like Donald Trump, he came in also on a kind of a populist campaign, and he promised to bring change to this country. But being a person who's coming from a civilian kind of world as compared to Jammeh, he brings something different. It's a leadership of consensus. He believes that he can, work with other coalition members. Several parties are working with him. He didn't just represent one party, but he's representing several opposition
What
groups.
are the issues that are of main concern to Gambians right now? Is it the economy? Is it social justice? What kinds of things do they want to see happen in their country?
I think top on the list is social justice. There's been a lot of, oppression. They want to see the rule of law come back. And then, of course, the economy, because this guy personalized the economy of the country. It's a very small country, really a very small country. Ideally, they shouldn't be having this level of poverty. But this guy really, personalized everything, and people couldn't speak freely. They're expecting to see a freeing of the space.
So there's an awful lot of optimism, I gather right now. Margaret, I'm running out of time, but are there any plans for the UN to maintain, or ECOWAS to maintain a presence in Gambia for coming weeks and months?
Well, the ECOWAS troops, there's I think about 2,500, are still in the country. I think at some border areas and in Banjul, the capital. I'm not sure, maybe they'll talk about it at the AU summit this weekend, what needs to be done going forward. But this is a country that has weak institutions, so they may stick around for a little while. We'll see. I
really do appreciate you showing up, Margaret, and Vincent as well. It's been way too long, my friend. That is our show this week, but we hope you'll join us again next week for another edition of The Correspondent.